beginning by base coating the tunic of the orc, and I'm going to be using Hammerfall Khaki by Privateer Press. I've thinned it down a little bit, and it's going to take a couple of coats to cover, but this is ideal as it's going to produce a final, smooth and thin coat of paint, which you wouldn't get as if you applied one thick coat. As you can see, I'm being quite messy. Okay, this doesn't matter, as I will clean up these areas later. I'm now applying a heavy wash of Citadel Devlin mud. This is going to really outline these details and really sink into the shades and really darken down the recesses of the tunic. This is going to look quite nice and it's going to provide nice contrast between the light areas and the darker tones. As you can see here, I'm using a wet palette, and for more information about wet palettes and how to make and use them, check out my Wet Palette 101 video. Now basically I'm applying some of my Hammerfall Khaki to the wet palette, and I'm going to darken it with a little bit of Devlin mud, just so the transition between the Devlin mud and the Hammerfall Khaki isn't so great. As you can see here, I'm also adding some Privateer Press mixing medium to the mixture of paint. Now this is kind of a bit of a cheat really. Basically it's going to add to the transparency of the paint while still keeping the thickness of the paint, making it easier to work with, easier to manipulate, but still having a high transparency. This is going to mean that I'm going to have an easier time of layering this because it's not so thin, but I'm still going to have a nice transparent blend between the different layers of paint. So as you can see, I'm starting to highlight the tunic using this initial colour. It's very thin and transparent, but I'm going to continue to build up layers of paint, continuing to go over the previous coat, simply painting in less of the highlight. This will result in a nice blend between the two colours. I'm going to have to cut out quite a bit of footage of me doing these blends, because unfortunately it takes such a long time. I will literally spend over 45 minutes just on one colour on this model. So just keep that in mind. It's not a quick process, but again, I can't have it all in this video, so I'm going to cut it out. I'm now going to skip to the next highlight, which is just adding in a little bit of ivory into the previous mix and applying that to the model. Again, using the same techniques, just working in thinned paint to get a nice smooth blend. As you can see, the blend doesn't need to be perfect, okay? There are imperfections, that's fine. I'm going to go back over it later using several glazes of different colours to smooth out the transitions. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some glazes, and what this is going to do is it's going to smooth together all of the layers that I've done of paint, and it's also just going to give it a really beautiful tone. It's going to make it much more like a light leather instead of the kind of powdery bone sort of colour I've got going at the moment. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be thinning down some game colour sepia ink. Alright, this is just a fantastic colour. It's kind of a brownish, yellowish kind of tone. It's fantastic. It works really well. As you can see, I'm just giving you a bit of an example of the consistency I've got it at. As you can see, as I just kind of brush it over a bit of text I've got on a piece of paper, it goes on nice and transparent. And now I'm just going to be applying very thin layers of this, and I'm going to be doing, probably even 10 or more layers of this just on the one area, and I'm just going to go over all the leather areas and of the tunic, of course, and I'm just going to repeatedly glaze over the surface. A glaze is basically a wash, except you're not allowing it to pool in the recesses. You're just brushing it over to change the colour of the base coat. So as you can see, when this is finished, just the incredible difference between before I've applied the glaze and after. As you can see, the glaze just gives it this beautiful rich tone and really ties the different layers of highlights together. I'm now using the colour Battlefield Brown by Privateer Press to base coat all of the leather straps, the dark leather straps, as well as some of the pouch kind of details and the boots of the model. I'm now giving the boots a wash of Games Workshop Bardub Black. I'm now re-highlighting the boots as well as the pouch with the original base colour, which was Battlefield Brown. I then add a little Hammerfall Khaki into the previous mix and highlight the boots and the pouch with that as well. I continue to highlight the boots and the pouch, mixing in more and more of the Hammerfall Khaki and just doing successive highlights with thinned paint. I then do a little bit of edging on some of the belts and straps on the model, and then that will be the dark brown areas complete. I'm going to do a very basic way of painting orc eyes and teeth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to begin by base coating the eyes using Cyan Yellow, and I'm also going to begin by base coating the teeth using Hammerfall Khaki. Really, any light bone and bright yellow colour could be used here. These two areas are then given different coloured washes. The eyes are given a wash of Bile Red by Games Workshop, and the teeth are given a wash of Devlin Mud. This is just going to give the eyes a nice kind of glowing, evil sort of appearance, and so it's just going to outline the teeth with kind of a dark brown, which is going to end up looking quite nice. I'm now using Bloodstone by Privateer Press. This is a very reddish brown, and it's an excellent way to add a bit of red to the model, which is of course the complementary colour of green, which is going to be the colour of the flesh. This is going to be used to base coat the model's pants. I'm now applying another Devlin Mud wash to the pants on the orc. However, I'm doing something just a little different. This time I'm thinning down the wash, and what this is going to mean is it's going to run more into the recesses and not darken up the raised surfaces as much, meaning I'm not going to have to re-highlight the model as much as I would as if I just applied it straight out of the pot. Because it's thinner, it will also mean that it's not going to darken down the pants too much and ruin the nice red kind of look that I've got going. I am now re-highlighting the pants using the original base colour. I'm keeping it reasonably thin and just applying a couple of nice smooth coats. I'm now mixing a little khaki into the base coat, and then of course I'm just going to highlight the pants with that as well. Almost forgot to mention, I'm just adding in a drop of the mixing medium, and again of course this is just going to add to the natural transparency of the paint, resulting in a smoother transition between the light and dark colours. I'm now using a mix of traitor green and thornwood green, and of course this is going to be used to base coat the skin. Now these two green colours are more mute, kind of natural green tones, which was really my intention in going into this model. A lot of people use really ridiculously bright, colourful, kind of stark green tones, like your classic kind of goblin green. And that's fine, but that wasn't the look I was going for in this model, as I wanted the green to look a little more natural so it would tie in with the natural environment that I wanted to create. I feel that if I'd used a bright green, then it would have kind of clashed with the browns and mute tones that had been painted onto the rest of the model. I also think that it would have felt really out of place with the natural kind of woodland base that I'm going to try and create. As you can see, I'm just applying this green to pretty much all the areas that I want to be in flesh colour, obviously leaving areas like the eyes and teeth in their base colours. It's reasonably thin. I'll apply 2 coats to get full coverage because I don't want to obscure any detail. But there's really no secrets here, very basic stuff, so I'm pretty much going to speed up the footage quite a bit and, skip some of it because it's not particularly interesting to watch. I'm now taking some Butter Black wash on my palette. I'm thinning it down with a little water, and then I'm also going to add some Thraka Green wash, and again thinning it down with some more water. So I'm basically creating a very nice dark green wash, and this is then going to be applied liberally to all the areas that are going to be the flesh colours, which I've already base coated in my Thornwood and Traitor Green mixture. I'm now re-highlighting the flesh areas, and for this I'm going to be using a thin down mixture of the base coat, and I'm just going to apply multiple thin layers until I build up an opaque coverage. One of the really handy things about a wet palette is when you kind of feather your paint out on the wet palette, it pre-thins your paint, so you don't really need to be worrying about thinning your paint more than the wet palette already does for you. I really like it because it's an almost auto-thin style of thing. All you need to do is dip your brush in the paint, kind of feather it out across the wet palette, and it will automatically thin it to a good consistency, ready for you to highlight your model. To get my next highlights, I simply mix in more and more khaki into the original base colour. I also add Privateer Press mixing medium so that my transitions are a bit smoother. As you can see, I continue to build up the highlights, simply painting in less and less of the highlight areas to get a smooth transition between the dark tone and the final highlight. I'm applying some thin layers of glaze to the model. To begin with, I'm going to use a thin glaze of sepia ink. Now this is just going to tie the layers together, give it a slight more brownish tinge, and this brownish kind of colour is going to tie it in nicely with the rest of the clothing on the model, as well as make it blend in better with the background, creating overall a bit more colour harmony to the piece. I'm now mixing up a glaze using thornwood green, and again I'm going to be applying this to the flesh tone areas. Now the reason I'm using this instead of continuing using the sepia ink is I don't want to change the highlights and make them too brown. I just want to have a bit of a brownish tone in there. I still want to keep it nice and green. And really, if your blends were a little smoother, this mightn't be necessary, but I felt that I needed to do a few more layers of glaze just to tie the layers together and make it look smooth, but I still didn't want to get an overall tone that ended up being a little too brown. As you can see, for the diorama base on the model, we're going to be using a small block of scrap wood. And in the next video, you're going to see me fully design the base, as well as finish painting up the model.